HOA thought they could control me. But I'm the judge who writes their rules. It all started with a letter. A single piece of paper taped to my door. Violation notice in bold red ink. They said my mailbox was too shiny, my lawn too green, and my smile too calm. They had no idea who I really was. No idea what I could do. No idea that every rule they used against me would soon be used to destroy them. Because when you push the wrong man, and that man happens to be the judge who writes your fate, you don't just lose your power, you lose everything. Welcome to HOA Secrets Uncovered, where every neighborhood hides a story, and every rule hides a lie. My name's Mark Holloway. I live in a quiet cul-de-sac just outside Austin, Texas. I moved here for peace. But what I found was war in disguise. I'm a county judge by profession. But lately, it feels like I've been trapped in a courtroom that never sleeps. My own neighborhood, my own front yard, turned into a battlefield of petty rules and fake smiles. And this is how it all began. It started that morning, just after sunrise. The air was calm, too calm. You know that strange silence before a storm. That was my street that day. I stepped out with my coffee, watching the sprinklers turn the lawns into tiny rainbows. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Like a movie set built to hide something rotten underneath. Then I saw her. The HOA president, Linda Grant. She smiled at me from across the street. But her eyes never smiled back. She was wearing her usual pastel suit, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. And beside her stood two other board members, both pretending to check something on their phones. But I could feel their stares, sharp as the edge of a knife. "Good morning, Mr. Holloway," she said. Her voice sugar-coated but her tone sharp. "I hope you've settled in nicely. We have a few adjustments to discuss." Adjustments. That word hung in the air like a bad smell. I smiled politely. "Adjustments?" I asked. "Yes," she said, stepping closer. "Your mailbox, it doesn't meet the color code standard." I blinked. "My mailbox?" "Yes," she replied, flipping a page on her clipboard. Regulation 3.7. Mailboxes must be painted in sand dune beige. Yours appears to be desert wheat. I took a slow sip of coffee. "Is there really a difference?" She smiled again. "There's always a difference when it comes to rules." And then she handed me a paper. My first violation notice. A bright red slip stapled to a stack of HOA policies. I remember laughing softly, because it felt unreal, like I had stepped into a parody of suburbia. But then she leaned in and whispered, "Don't take it personally, Mr. Holloway. We just like things under control." That last part hit harder than it should have. Under control. I watched her walk away, her heels clicking like a metronome for madness. The two other board members followed. One of them glanced back at me. The look on his face wasn't curiosity. It was pity. I went back inside, placed the notice on my counter, and read it again. Every word felt like a threat wearing polite clothes. Failure to comply within 7 days may result in fines or community review. 7 days. For a mailbox color. That night I couldn't sleep. It wasn't the letter. It was the tone. The smug, silent message between the lines. They thought I was another quiet homeowner. Someone who'd just nod and obey. But I've seen this before. In courtrooms. In boardrooms. In people who mistake authority for power. I knew exactly what kind of woman Linda was. She didn't want peace. She wanted control. The next morning, I painted the mailbox. Not because I was scared, but because I was curious. I wanted to see what they'd do next. And they didn't disappoint. 3 days later, another letter. Violation notice, unauthorized lawn ornament. It was about the small stone frog near my porch. A gift from my late wife. They said it disrupted neighborhood symmetry. I remember staring at that frog, tiny, harmless, and wondering how people could turn beauty into a crime. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about rules. It was about dominance. They wanted to see if I'd bend. So I smiled, and didn't bend at all. I placed the frog right back where it belonged, right in the middle of the porch. And that evening, I saw Linda again, standing across the street, watching, smiling, writing something down on her clipboard. I waved at her. She didn't wave back. The next morning, there was another note on my door. Community reminder, respect HOA regulations. And underneath it, a handwritten line. You don't want to make this difficult. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't just about petty rules anymore. It was a test, a power game. And I've played that game my entire career. But never like this. Never in my own neighborhood. Never surrounded by manicured lawns and fake smiles. Every house on that street looked peaceful. But I could feel the tension buzzing beneath the paint. People pretending everything was fine, while quietly praying they wouldn't be the next target. That's how HOA power worked. Fear in the shape of friendship. So I decided to wait. To watch. To see how far they'd push before realizing the truth. That I wasn't their toy. I wasn't their victim. And most of all, I wasn't their equal. Because when you spend your life judging conflicts, you learn one thing. The louder someone hides behind rules, the more terrified they are of real justice. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for Friday night, and I planned to be there. Quietly, calmly, with a smile that matched Linda's fake one. But inside, I was already preparing. Not for a fight, for a lesson, a legal one. They wanted control. I wanted balance. Only one of us would win. And as I watched the sunset bathe the street in gold, I wondered just one thing. If you were me, would you play by their rules? Or make them play by yours? That Friday night, the air felt heavier than usual. The kind of weight that sits on your chest and whispers, something coming. The community center, lights glowed across the street. Cars lined the curb in perfect symmetry. Because perfection was a rule here. Even fear had to look tidy. I stood outside for a moment, watching the parade of neighbors walking in. All smiles, all polite nods. But I could see it in their eyes. Everyone feared Linda, even the ones who called her dear friend. I walked in slow, the sound of my shoes echoing off polished floors. The smell of lemon cleaner filled the air. Vague freshness for vague peace. Linda sat at the front table, clipboard in hand, a small microphone in front of her. Her expression calm. Too calm. Like a cat who already knew where the mouse would run. "Ah, Mr. Holloway," she said into the mic. Her voice warm, controlled. "So good of you to join us. Please take a seat." I nodded and sat down in the second row. Around me, the other homeowners whispered softly, like schoolchildren waiting for the teacher's punishment list. The meeting began with the usual nonsense. Noise complaints, lawn heights, a mailbox too red, someone's wind chime too reflective at sunset. It was a circus dressed as a council. Then Linda smiled at the room. Her eyes flicked toward me, And finally, she said, we have a rather sensitive issue. A pause. You could feel everyone's eyes shift in my direction. She continued, it appears that Mr. Holloway has been less than cooperative. Gasps. Murmurs. One neighbor looked at me like I'd just set fire to my house. Linda flipped a page. He has ignored 2 warnings regarding decorative violations and may be in breach of Community Code 4.3, obstruction of aesthetic harmony. I smiled slowly. Obstruction of what now? She adjusted her glasses. Aesthetic harmony, Mr. Holloway. Every item placed outside a home must align with community appearance standards. Your stone frog does not. I leaned forward. Would you like me to remove it or take it to court? The room went still. You could have heard a pin drop. Linda froze for just a second. Her jaw tightened. Let's not be dramatic, she said. We prefer to keep things civil. Civil? That word again. I'd heard it 1,000 times in my courtroom. Right before someone lost everything. I nodded. I'm all for civility. Her smile returned. Tight. Cold. Then I trust we'll see compliance soon. The rest of the meeting dragged on. But I didn't hear most of it. I was too busy watching. The way people sat in silence. The way no one ever challenged her. Like she was the queen of some tiny, pastel kingdom. When the meeting ended, neighbors scattered fast. Like birds after thunder. I stood up and walked toward the door. But Linda's voice followed. Mr. Holloway, she called. I do hope you'll think carefully about your choices. I turned back. Always do, I said and left. Outside, the air felt cooler. The night quiet. Almost peaceful. But I knew it was the kind of quiet that doesn't last. The next morning, my mailbox was gone. Just gone. Post ripped from the ground. The dirt around it freshly disturbed. I laughed under my breath. Because I knew exactly what this was. Intimidation wrapped in pettiness. A warning disguised as vandalism. I walked back inside, poured coffee, and stared out the window. Across the street, Linda stood with one of her board members, pretending to check the hedges. But her eyes never left my yard. I raised my cup slightly. A silent toast. And she turned away. That evening, I started documenting everything. Every note. Every fine. Every foe. All of it neatly organized, date stamped and printed. Because old habits die hard. And when you've spent years behind a judge's bench, you learn to build a case before the battle even starts. 3 days later, I received a letter. Certified. Official. HOA legal action notice. They were fining me for failure to maintain property standards. Because apparently, having no mailbox was now a violation too. That one actually made me laugh out loud. They had taken my mailbox and fined me for it not being there. Beautiful irony. Pure HOA poetry. I didn't fight back. Not yet. I paid the fine. Because I wanted them comfortable. Confident. Arrogant. Let them think they won. But things were changing. The neighbors had started whispering. A few approached me quietly. One, an old man named Rick, said under his breath, "Careful, she's ruined people here before." I asked how. He said they lose their jobs, their credit. She knows people. Then he walked off, looking over his shoulder twice before turning the corner. That night, I found a flyer taped to my door. Community reminder, cooperation builds harmony. And written at the bottom in pen, you can still make this right. I stared at it for a long time, the paper shaking slightly in my hand. Not from fear, but from the effort it took not to laugh. They wanted obedience. But what they'd just done was give me legal ammunition. By the end of the week, I filed my first motion. Quietly, formally, the kind of document that doesn't scream. It whispers, and when it whispers, people listen. The motion didn't go to court. Not yet. It went to the County Property Oversight Board, the same office I preside over every month. No names, no signatures, just facts, violations, and misuse of community funds. I didn't sign it as Judge Holloway, just as resident, because I wanted them to learn the hard way. The next HOA meeting was approaching, and this time I wouldn't be sitting in the second row. I'd be sitting in judgment, even if they didn't know it yet. That night, as I stood in my driveway, the streetlights flickered softly. The air hummed with that strange stillness again. And I thought about all the people Linda had bullied, all the fake smiles, all the quiet suffering. It was time for balance. But something told me she wasn't done yet, because people like her never surrender power willingly. They tighten their grip until something or someone snaps. I looked at the empty spot where my mailbox used to stand and smiled to myself. If they could take away my mailbox, what would they try to take next? And more importantly, how far would you let them go before you fought back? It started again, just before dawn. That same sound. A light tap, tap, tap against my front door. I opened it slowly. No one there. Just another note. Folded once. Taped neatly. Like always. But this one was different. It wasn't printed. It was handwritten. In perfect cursive letters that almost looked too elegant for threats. No name. No address. Just that. And a faint scent of cheap perfume. I stood there for a while, barefoot on the cold porch tiles, staring at the note as the wind tried to steal it from my hand. The neighborhood was silent, every window dark, every curtain closed. But I could feel it. Eyes. Watching. Always watching. I walked back inside, made coffee, sat by the window and waited for the sunrise. The calm orange light spilled over the trimmed lawns. Perfect again. Like nothing bad could ever happen. But I knew better now. This wasn't peace. It was control painted pretty. I'd already filed my quiet complaint to the oversight board. Now I was just waiting. Watching. Taking notes like they did. Only difference. My notes would matter. By 9 a.m., there was another knock. This time, the mailman. He looked uneasy. "Morning, Judge. I mean Mr. Holloway," he said. "Got something here that looks official." He handed me a thick envelope. No return address. Just the HOA logo stamped in gold. I opened it carefully. Inside were photos. Pictures of my house. Taken at night. Close-ups of my windows. My car. My porch light. Even the frog statue. At the bottom, a short note. I felt my jaw tighten. They were spying on me now. I looked out the window again. And right on cue, there she was. Linda. Standing across the street. Pretending to talk to another neighbor. Clipboard in hand. Eyes locked right on me. I stepped outside. The sun was bright, the air still. And when she saw me coming, her smile returned, plastic and sharp. "Good morning, Mr. Holloway," she said sweetly. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" "It was," I said, until I started receiving photos of my house in the mail. Her face didn't move. Not a single blink. "Oh dear," she said softly. "Perhaps someone's just overenthusiastic about community standards. Someone who uses your letterhead I asked. Now her smile faltered for a split second, then returned. Misunderstandings happen, she said. You know how communities can be. Everyone watching everyone. It keeps us safe. Safe? That word sounded wrong coming from her. I leaned closer. Linda, I said quietly, spying on residents isn't a rule. It's a crime. Her expression didn't change. She just tilted her head. Then perhaps, she said, you should take it up with someone who writes the rules. And that's when I smiled, because she had no idea who she was talking to. I turned away and walked back home. Her voice followed. I hope you'll be joining our next community walkthrough. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. By noon, I started hearing whispers. Neighbors stopping their sprinklers mid-spin when I walked by. Conversations ending when I waved. Something was changing. I was no longer just a resident. I was an issue. That afternoon, I decided to take a small drive. Cleared my head. When I returned, I noticed something strange. My porch camera light was off. Dead. I checked the cables. Cut clean. Straight through. And sitting on the welcome mat, another letter. No one knew. No one should know. About my position. I never mentioned it. Never bragged. I wanted a quiet life. So how did they know? That night I barely slept. Every creak in the floor sounded like footsteps. Every passing car felt like someone circling my house. I sat in the dark living room with a cup of black coffee. The frog statue outside gleaming faintly under the streetlight. And for the first time, I felt something colder than anger. I felt curiosity. Who told them? Who whispered my secret to Linda? The next morning I walked to Rick's house. The old man who had warned me. His curtains were drawn. I knocked. No answer. I noticed a yellow paper on his door. Property in violation, grass over 4 inches. But Rick's lawn was perfect. Every blade even. Every corner trimmed. This was punishment. For talking. I checked my mailbox, well, the spot where it used to be, and found a new post installed overnight. Shawnee Bay. Exactly HOA approved. A note taped on it. They had replaced what they destroyed. To prove they could. That was the moment I knew. This wasn't a power game anymore. This was war. I went back inside and pulled out a folder. The one filled with their letters, fines, threats. I added the new ones. My collection of quiet evidence was growing. Piece by piece. Like a jigsaw puzzle leading to judgment. By sunset, I sat on my porch. Watched Linda walk her tiny dog past my driveway. She didn't look at me. But I saw her hand slip something into my mailbox. After she left, I went to check. A single white envelope. Inside, one photo. Me. Sitting on my own porch. The note said. My heart froze. Because now I knew. They weren't guessing. They knew. Someone had told them. Someone close. Someone who wanted me exposed. I sat there silent as the streetlights flickered on. My reflection staring back from the photo in my hand. And in that strange half-light between calm and chaos, a thought crossed my mind. If they could find out who I really am, what else could they already be planning behind those perfect white fences? The night after that photo arrived, I didn't sleep at all. Not a second. The house felt too quiet, too still, like the calm air before a verdict drops in court. I sat in the living room, lights off, watching the faint glow from the street lamps spill through the blinds. That photo sat on my coffee table, my own face staring back at me, captured from the shadows. Who took it? When and why did it feel like they wanted me to see it, not fear it? At exactly 2:17 a.m., a car passed slowly by my house. Headlights dimmed. No sound but the low hum of an engine. It crawled, then stopped for a second. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then it drove off. I walked to the window. And there she was again. Linda, standing across the street. In her robe. Arms crossed. Just staring. No clipboard this time. No smile. Just those cold eyes under the streetlight. I didn't go out. Didn't confront her. Not yet. Because now I wasn't reacting. I was building. By morning, I had every camera replaced. Hidden ones too. Small enough to blend with porch lights and flower pots. I connected them to a private server I used for courtroom evidence storage. If they wanted to play surveillance, they'd learn what real observation looked like. By noon, I was back at the courthouse. In my office, judging someone else's property dispute. It felt almost poetic. Two brothers fighting over a fence line, both claiming the law was on their side. They shouted, accused, insulted. And I just sat there, calm. Because I'd seen worse. Heard worse. Lived worse. When the session ended, my assistant knocked. Judge Holloway, there's someone waiting for you. It was a woman. Mid-30s. Nervous. Holding a small folder. I'm sorry to bother you, she said. I used to live in your neighborhood. I leaned back. Used to. She nodded. HOA made my life hell. They fined me until I couldn't pay. Filed liens on my house. And when I tried to appeal, somehow every lawyer in town refused to take the case. I frowned. Every lawyer. Yes, she whispered. Linda has connections. Her brother works for the local property firm. She knows how to make problems disappear. My pulse slowed. That explained a lot. The power, the arrogance, the confidence of someone who never expected consequences. She slid the folder toward me. Copies of old board documents, emails, financial records. They lost these after I moved. But I kept them. Inside were dozens of pages. Unauthorized expenses, hidden reimbursements, personal purchases labeled as community costs, vacations listed as HOA conferences. My eyes narrowed, because I knew what I was holding. Evidence of fraud. Serious fraud. Why bring this to me? I asked. She smiled faintly. Because you're the first person I've seen stand up to them. Everyone else just gives up. When she left, I sat there staring at the papers. The smell of courthouse air conditioning blending with something sharper, justice. Real justice. The kind that makes people nervous. That night I drove home slow. Every porch light looked brighter than usual. Every window darker. I parked and sat in my car for a moment. The neighborhood looked peaceful again. But now I could see the pattern. The order in the chaos. Every complaint. Every letter. Every fine. It wasn't random. It was targeted. Calculated control. When I walked to my door, I saw something that made me stop. A shadow moved behind my bushes. Small. Quick. Gone in a blink. I didn't chase it. Just looked around. And noticed the frog statue had been turned. It was facing the street now. Like a watcher. I crouched down and checked the base. There, inside a small crack, was a tiny black lens. A camera. I smiled. Softly. Almost proud. They thought they were clever. I removed it. Pocketed it. And whispered to the air. Nice try. Then I went inside, closed every curtain, sat down with the documents from the former resident, and started making copies. Around 10 p.m. my phone buzzed. An unknown number. A text. I laughed, out loud this time, because now they were scared. Scared people make mistakes, and mistakes make evidence. I typed a reply. See you at the next meeting. The next morning, I filed an anonymous request for a full audit of the HOA's accounts. The oversight board accepted it. Standard procedure. Routine. Unremarkable. Except for one detail. They had no idea the request came from the man who'd be reviewing their answers. I wanted to see how Linda would react. Would she hide it? Would she fake the records? Would she start pointing fingers? The tension in the neighborhood grew. People whispered again. This time louder. Rumors spread. Something about financial irregularities. Something about the president being nervous. One of the board members, a tall man named Curtis, approached me quietly one morning. Said he wanted to talk off record. We met near the park bench. He looked pale. You didn't hear it from me, he said. But Linda's been shredding documents. Whole boxes. Says it's just cleaning up old files. But I've seen her face. She's scared of something. I just nodded. Didn't speak. Didn't need to. When I got home, I checked my porch camera feeds. And there it was. Linda. Late last night. Standing at the edge of my driveway again. Looking right at the camera. This time she waved. The video ended there. It wasn't fear that ran through me then. It was something colder. Purpose. Because the game had changed. The hunted had become the hunter. Now I wasn't asking if she'd break. I was waiting to see how she'd do it. The neighborhood had turned into a stage. Every smile fake. Every greeting suspicious. And right in the middle of it, justice was quietly waking up. I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and let the silence settle again. Because tomorrow, I'd finally knock on her door. The morning I decided to knock on her door. The air felt heavier than usual. Like the whole neighborhood was holding its breath. Watching, waiting. Pretending not to care. I didn't dress like a judge that day. No suit, no tie. Just jeans, a plain shirt, and the calm of a man who's already read the ending of the book everyone else is still guessing. Linda's house sat at the far end of the lane. White walls, perfect garden, no leaf out of place. Even the wind seemed careful not to disturb her symmetry. I walked up the stone path, each step echoing louder than it should. The curtains shifted. She knew I was coming. When I knocked, the door opened halfway. Her smile returned, that same perfect, hollow smile that looked painted on. Judge Holloway, she said softly, what a surprise. I think we need to talk, I said. She tilted her head slightly, eyes scanning me the way a hawk studies movement. About what? About everything, I replied, and handed her the printed copy of the audit request. Her eyes flicked over the paper, and for the first time since I'd met her, her expression faltered. Just for a moment, a crack in the porcelain mask. Then it was gone. I see, she said calmly, you're very thorough. Funny, I said, that's what people used to say about me in court. She smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. You're making a mistake, you know. You're new here. You don't understand how this community works. I'm starting to, I said, taking a step closer. A few of your former neighbors helped me understand even better. Her hand tightened on the doorframe. You don't know what you're getting into. Oh, I think I do, I whispered, and I think you do too. For a second, we just stood there. No words, just two people who both knew the truth, one clinging to control, the other finally taking it back. Then I smiled. "See you at the next meeting, Linda." I turned and walked away. Her voice followed me, low, controlled, but trembling just enough to reveal what she didn't want me to hear. "This isn't over." I didn't reply, because I knew she was right. It was. That night something strange happened. At 1:03 a.m., one of my cameras caught movement in the backyard. A shape small, fast, slipping between the shadows near my shed. The feed glitched for half a second, then cleared. The figure was gone. When I went outside to check, I found nothing disturbed, except the shed door was unlocked. Inside, everything looked normal: tools, boxes, my bike. But when I turned to leave, I noticed something near the floor, a folded piece of paper. I picked it up. It was a photo. Another one. This time, it wasn't of me. It was of my sister, smiling outside her clinic 2 states away. And written across the bottom, in neat handwriting. My hands went cold. That was the moment the game changed again. It wasn't about property lines, or fines, or HOA meetings anymore. It was personal. I called my sister immediately. She was fine, hadn't noticed anything strange. But I could hear it in her voice, the slight tremor of worry she was trying to hide. I didn't tell her about the photo. Not yet. Instead, I went back inside, locked the doors, and opened my laptop. I pulled up every feed, every recording, every piece of data I'd collected. Then I did what I do best: built a case. Timeline, motive, opportunity. It all pointed in one direction. Linda wasn't acting alone. The HOA wasn't just corrupt, it was connected. There were signatures from people outside the community: lawyers, real estate agents, even one officer who approved their violations without inspection. It was a web. Tight, hidden, beautifully organized. And I was the first person to tug the thread. By 4 a.m., I'd compiled everything into a single encrypted drive. I wrote one name on it: the smile that lied. When the sun rose, I sat on the porch, waiting. I knew she'd show up. She had to. And right on time, 8:27 a.m., Linda appeared, walking her dog like she always did. But this time, she didn't look up at my house. She just walked slower than usual, like she was waiting for me to come out. So I did. Our eyes met across the street. Her lips curled into that polite smile again. But this time, I noticed something new: fear behind the confidence. She knew I had something she couldn't control. I raised my coffee mug slightly, like a toast. She turned and walked away. That evening, I got an email. No name, no subject. Just a single sentence. Attached was a video clip. Grainy, timestamped years ago. Linda sitting in a restaurant with 2 men. One of them was a city inspector. The other was a lawyer from my own courthouse. The same lawyer who'd once begged me to dismiss a zoning case. The same lawyer I'd denied. So that's what this was. Not coincidence. Not bad luck. Retribution. I stared at the screen, heart pounding, and whispered to myself, "This goes higher than I thought." And maybe that's why I didn't hear the sound right away: the faint crack of glass behind me. The living room window. A small hole in the corner. Barely visible. Someone had shot a BB pellet or something stronger. A warning. No note this time. No message. Just proof that they were done playing subtle. I sat in the dark that night, one question circling in my mind over and over. If the person behind all this was Linda, then who the hell was really watching me? The next morning didn't start with sunlight. It started with sirens, far away at first, then closer, until the whole neighborhood woke up, until I realized they were stopping in front of my house. 3 police cars, 1 unmarked black sedan, and the same HOA security officer who'd once measured my lawn with a ruler. He stood at the gate now, smiling, like he finally had something on me. I opened the door before they could knock. "Judge Holloway?" the lead officer asked. "Yes," I said calmly, though my pulse was racing. "We received a report," he said, "about suspicious surveillance activity and illegal recording equipment." I almost laughed. So that was the move. They were trying to flip the script, accuse me of spying, of breaking their rules. I stepped aside. "Go ahead," I said. "Check whatever you want." They did. Room to room, drawer to drawer, camera feeds, laptops, notes, all checked. But the only thing they found was evidence of the HOA's own violations. Falsified fine, backdated letters, tampered documents. The officer's tone changed real quick. He turned to me, confused. "Sir, why would someone accuse you of this?" I smiled faintly. "Because they're running out of ways to scare me." When they left, the street was silent again. But I could feel it, eyes behind the blinds. Every neighbor pretending not to watch, pretending not to know what side they were on. And there she was again. Linda standing across the road, her dog still in her hand. Expression unreadable. Until I saw the small nod she gave me, almost like a warning. Then she turned away, faster than before. I didn't follow her. I didn't need to. Because I'd already discovered something that morning that changed everything. The night before, when I'd been backing up my files, I'd noticed one folder I didn't create, hidden deep in my own drive, labeled simply HOA Internal. It had been there for weeks, buried in system files, invisible unless you knew where to look. Inside were meeting recordings, uncut audio, private conversations. Not just HOA members, but city officials, discussing how to protect certain properties, how to silence complaints, and one phrase that froze my blood cold. "He's not just a homeowner, he's a problem." So they were watching me long before I ever noticed them. Someone had planted this evidence on me. Maybe as a threat, maybe as insurance. But it was too late now, because I wasn't just their problem anymore. I was their consequence. That night I called an old friend, Detective Laura Reed. We'd worked a few cases together years back. The kind that taught you who to trust and who to never call again. When she picked up, her voice was low, cautious. "Mark, you're still alive." "Barely," I said. "I need your help." She sighed. "You always do." We met at a diner outside town. The kind where the lights flicker and the waitress remembers everyone's order. I told her everything, the fines, the photos, the threats. She listened quietly, only interrupting once. "When did you say this started?" 3 months ago, I said. She nodded slowly. "That's around the same time, too, other neighborhoods filed corruption reports." I leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "Same structure," she said. "Fake violations, bribed inspectors, properties sold off cheap to shell buyers. Mark, it's a network, a real estate laundering operation hiding behind HOA boards." I stared at her, the whole puzzle suddenly snapping together in my head. Linda wasn't the queen. She was just another pawn. And the people above her, the ones pulling the strings, they weren't defending their lawns or fences. They were protecting millions. "So," Laura said, "what do you want to do?" I took a deep breath. "End it." She smiled faintly. "There's my judge. We planned it carefully. I gave her the hidden files, the audit trail, and the recordings. She pulled in a quiet team, no press, no leaks, no paperwork yet. They'd investigate from the shadows. And if everything lined up, the hammer would fall hard. Back in my neighborhood, things went quiet. Too quiet. No more notes, no fines, no visits. Even Linda stopped her morning walks. The calm before the storm. One evening, as I was locking my gate, a car slowed down outside. A tinted window rolled halfway. A man's voice said softly, "You're making powerful enemies, Judge." Then the car drove off. No plates, no faces. Just silence. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because of fear, but because I knew this was almost over. They were cornered. And when cornered animals panic, they bite. At 2:11 a.m. my phone buzzed. A text from Laura. I answered instantly. Her voice was sharp, urgent. "They're shredding documents at HOA headquarters. We're moving tonight." I was out the door before she finished. By the time I reached the community office, police were already surrounding the place. Linda stood outside in handcuffs. Her face pale. Eyes locked on me. No anger this time, just exhaustion. And maybe relief. They found everything. Fake accounts, altered signatures, blackmail lists. Even private photos of residents used for extortion. It was bigger than either of us had imagined. As they loaded her into the car, she looked at me one last time. "Mark," she whispered, "I tried to stop them, but you can't fight ghosts." Then the door shut. Ghosts. That word stayed with me. Because later that night, as I reviewed the seized files, one name appeared again and again. Hidden in the approvals. Signed on every fake document. A name I recognized instantly. A name from my own courthouse. It wasn't just corruption. It was betrayal. From someone I'd trusted for years. I leaned back in my chair. Heart pounding. Staring at the name glowing on the screen. The man behind everything. The man who tried to bury me through my own neighborhood. The courthouse never felt this cold before. Not even on the mornings when I'd sentenced murderers or thieves. This time, it wasn't just a trial. It was a reckoning, and I was sitting on both sides of it. The man they brought in wore confidence like a suit. Neat tie, polished shoes, fake warmth in his smile. I'd seen that face 100 times before. Across benches, in meetings, at quiet dinners, where justice was just a word people tossed around. His name was Daniel Mercer, chief counsel for the city. My old colleague. And the ghost behind every false HOA order that had wrecked my neighborhood. He walked past me with that same calm arrogance. Like he still believed the world was a boardroom. Like he still believed I wouldn't dare make a move. "Mark," he said quietly, "this isn't personal." But the way he said my name, like a warning, made it sound like everything was. I didn't answer. I just watched him sit. And for the first time in months, I felt something like peace. Because the evidence Laura had gathered was airtight. Every false notice, every bribe, every signature traced back to him. Even the secret fund, a quiet account hidden behind property trusts and fake buyers. All tied to Daniel Mercer. And when the FBI got involved, it wasn't about lawns or fences anymore. It was about fraud, laundering, coercion. And me, the quiet homeowner he tried to bury, was now the key witness. As the trial began, the courtroom buzzed with whispers. Reporters outside, neighbors glued to screens. Everyone suddenly pretending they'd always known something was wrong. But none of them were there when the threats came in. When the nights went long and the windows cracked. They only came now when it was safe to look. Daniel sat straight, hands folded, face calm. Even as the evidence poured in. Emails, bank transfers, meeting notes. His smile never faded. And I knew why. He thought he could outlast me. He thought judges protect their own. When it was my turn to speak, I stood. No script, no notes. Just the truth. And the truth, when spoken simply, hits harder than any speech. I moved into that neighborhood because I wanted quiet, I said slowly. I wanted peace after years of handling other people's chaos. I paused. But I forgot something. Power doesn't need a courtroom to corrupt a man. It only needs a rule book and the belief that no one will read it. The silence after that sentence hung heavy. Even Daniel looked away for the first time. By the end of the hearing, he was done. Charged on multiple counts. Removed from office. And sentenced to years that would feel longer than justice itself. But victory didn't feel like victory. Because when the gavel fell, I saw Linda sitting in the back. Hands folded, tears glinting under the light. She mouthed one word, sorry. And in that moment, I believed her. After the trial, the HOA board was dissolved. Every document seized. Every fine reversed. The neighborhood returned to what it was supposed to be. Just homes. Just people. Just peace. But peace never stays. Because the week after, I received another envelope. No name, no return address. Inside, a simple note. Attached was a list of properties across the state. Dozens of HOAs, all linked through the same hidden network. The same schemes. The same shadow owners. Daniel wasn't the architect. He was just one of the builders. I stared at the paper for a long time. The quiet of my house pressing around me. And I realized the story wasn't over. It had only widened. That night I walked through my neighborhood. Streetlights humming, lawns still. Families sitting on porches again. Kids riding bikes where silence once ruled. For the first time, I didn't feel watched. But I did feel chosen by something darker than chance. When I reached Linda's old house, it was empty. Windows boarded, grass overgrown. A single for sale sign leaning sideways. But taped to the door was a scrap of paper. Weathered, torn. Just 2 words written in black ink. I smiled, not out of amusement, but because I understood. There are wars that happen in daylight. And wars fought quietly, in cul-de-sacs and backyard fences. Where rules are weapons. And signatures decide fates. I looked up at the moon. And whispered to myself. They thought they could control me, but I write the rules now. And maybe that's why I didn't flinch when another car slowed near my house that night. Windows tinted, engine silent. It didn't stop. Didn't linger. Just rolled by like a shadow checking its reflection.